My husband still lived here, of course. He just wasn't present. He worked late, came home after midnight, ate dinner without words, and slept before I could even ask how his day went. We were two strangers sharing one bed, separated not by distance, but by the weight of unspoken things. During the day, I kept myself busy, laundry, cooking, cleaning, pretending that the silence was peace. At night, when the lights went off, that silence turned into something else, something heavy. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, asking myself if this is what love turns into, quiet resignation. I used to dream once, of a life full of passion, of being seen, being held. Now, I was just a mother, a wife, a background sound in everyone else's story. Then there was Ian, my son, my little boy who wasn't so little anymore. He had just come home for his college break, taller now, his voice deeper, his eyes calmer. He noticed things, small things, like how I sat longer by the window at night, how I sometimes forgot to eat, how I smiled without meaning it. One night, I was half asleep when I felt something, a soft creak of the door. For a second, I froze. Then I saw him, standing by the doorway, a faint outline against the dim hallway light. "Aman," I whispered. He didn't answer, just said softly, "You weren't sleeping, were you?" I shook my head. He smiled sadly, the kind of smile that says I understand. Then he said, "You should rest, Mom," and quietly closed the door. But sleep never came, because for the first time in years, someone had noticed. Someone saw that I wasn't okay. Not as a mother, not as a wife, just as a woman. That night, I didn't feel lonely. And I didn't know why that frightened me more than the loneliness ever did. At first, it felt comforting. His presence filled the emptiness that had been swallowing me for years. He listened, really listened, and in his voice, there was patience, care, and attention I hadn't felt in so long. When he laughed, I found myself laughing too. When he looked at me, I felt seen. But then came the unease. I began noticing small things, how my heart would beat faster when he brushed past me in the kitchen, how I'd find excuses to linger when he spoke. I told myself it was just affection, a mother's pride, a simple joy of being close to someone who understood me. Yet deep inside, I knew there was something else, something that frightened me. That evening, we sat together watching an old movie. The lights were dim, the sound of rain tapping against the window. My husband had called to say he'd be working late again. I remember the warmth of Ian's shoulder barely touching mine. Neither of us moved, neither of us spoke, but in that silence, there was a strange electricity, a breath we both held and didn't release. Later that night, I lay in bed trying to shake it off. I told myself it was just loneliness playing tricks, that it meant nothing. But as I closed my eyes, I heard that soft creak again, the door opening slowly, like it had before. I didn't move. My breath caught somewhere between fear and curiosity. I felt his presence in the room, quiet, hesitant. The air itself seemed to stop moving. "Ian," I whispered, my voice barely there. No answer, just silence. Then, a step closer. The sound of his breathing, soft, trembling, and mine, matching it. For a moment that felt endless, neither of us spoke. There were no words, no explanations, only confusion and closeness. A moment that shouldn't have existed, but did. And then, just as quietly as he had come, he was gone. The door closed. The room felt heavier than before, filled with everything unsaid. I sat there in the dark, my hands shaking, my heart unsteady. I didn't cry, I couldn't. There was only shock, guilt, and something else I couldn't admit. That night, I crossed a line I didn't even know existed, not because I was in love, but because I was lost. Ian avoided my eyes. He mumbled a good morning and left the table early. The clink of his spoon against the bowl was the only sound between us. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words died before reaching my lips. What could I possibly say? There are no words for a mistake you can't even admit to yourself. The hours dragged. Every corner of the house reminded me of last night, the creak of the door, the sound of rain, the silence that followed. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror and almost didn't recognize myself. My face looked the same, but my eyes, My eyes were haunted by something I didn't want to name. That evening, my husband came home early. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "You look tired." I wanted to scream, "You have no idea how tired I am." But I just nodded and smiled. The guilt pressed against my chest like a weight I couldn't lift. I watched him eat, laugh about work, completely unaware of the storm that had settled inside me. Later, as I stood at the sink washing dishes, one slipped and shattered on the floor. The sound was sharp, startling. Ian came running from his room, his face pale when he saw me standing there frozen, pieces of porcelain at my feet. He started to help, but I shook my head. "No," I said softly, "please, don't." Our eyes met for the first time since that night. There was fear in his, and shame in mine. For days after, the silence between us grew thicker. He stopped staying in the living room, stopped talking to me for long. It was as if we both agreed, without saying it, that the safest thing was distance. But even in that distance, the memory stayed alive, a whisper in the back of my mind that wouldn't fade. Sometimes, I'd hear him in his room, pacing. Sometimes, I'd see him sitting on the porch, staring into nothing. I wanted to go to him, to say something that would make it all disappear, but there was nothing left to say. We had already broken something that could never be fixed. That silence became our punishment. We shared the same roof, the same air, the same unspoken guilt. But we never shared words again. And at night, when the house went quiet again, I realized, the silence that used to feel empty now felt alive. It breathed with the weight of what we'd done, and it never let me rest. Time has a way of dulling pain, but not of erasing it. I've repainted the walls, replaced the furniture, even changed the curtains, yet somehow, the past still lingers in the air. Every quiet evening brings it back, that same silence, that same shadow of what once crossed the line between comfort and destruction. I've learned that infidelity doesn't begin with a touch. It begins much earlier, with neglect, with loneliness left to grow roots. It begins in moments when we stop being seen, when our hearts start searching for warmth in places they shouldn't. What happened that night wasn't planned, wasn't wanted, but it was born from years of emptiness, and once something forbidden begins, it never truly ends. Sometimes I wonder if Ian remembers. I tell myself he doesn't, that he's built a new life, one untouched by that mistake. But deep down, I know he does. Some things, no matter how much time passes, are too heavy to forget. Our silence was our secret, our curse, and maybe our lesson. I've spent years trying to forgive myself, but forgiveness is a strange thing. It doesn't come easily when you've betrayed everything you were meant to protect. I thought betrayal was only of the body, but I've learned it's of the heart, of the silence, of the moments we choose not to stop. People often say time heals. Maybe it does, but it also remembers. And sometimes, it makes you sit with your memories until you finally understand them. I've stopped asking for peace, now I just ask for understanding, that the woman I was then was lost, unseen, and searching for something that wasn't love, but a reflection of what love used to feel like. Now, when the rain falls against my window, I listen, not to the storm outside, but to the one that still whispers inside me. It doesn't hurt as it used to. It's just there, like a scar that has learned to live quietly. If love forgets you, what would you do? Would you wait for it to return, or go searching for it in forbidden places? I found my answer too late. And though the world outside moves on, I still live with the quiet truth that every choice leaves a shadow, and some shadows never fade.